Imagine holding a secret that will literally kill you if you share it, but your partner demands you tell them anyway, even if you die. Welcome to the wildest, weirdest tale from the Arabian Nights.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Would you die for a secret?
Hey guys, subscribe if you want, but honestly, just stick around for this explainer, because the logic in this 1,000-year-old story gets completely crazy. Let's dive into it.
Alright, Section 1. The deadly secret and coworkers plot a scam. So, we start with a wealthy merchant who has this incredible, Dr. Dolittle-style power. He can understand the languages of animals. But there's a huge catch. If he ever reveals this secret to anyone, he will instantly die. And with that setup, we get into some bizarre workplace drama happening out in his barn.
Now, what's really funny about this is how relatable it actually is. Think of the donkey and the ox like two coworkers plotting to get out of a shift. The ox is exhausted, complaining bitterly about the plowman making him work all day out in the fields, and the donkey, who has a much easier life, decides to offer some unsolicited career advice.
The donkey essentially tells the ox to fake sick. He says, if he brings me my fodder, I will pretend to be ill, lie down, and puff my belly. And the ox loves this. He fully agrees to the scam. But suddenly, well, the donkey completely backtracks. Why? Because the donkey just overheard the merchant telling the plowman that if the ox won't work, he's going to call the butcher, slaughter the ox, and give his meat away as alms. So the donkey nervously tells the ox, like, you might want to reconsider and look busy so they don't literally cut your throat.
Okay, yeah, that's a terrible idea. The ox just farts and bellows in response to the whole mess, which is probably the only appropriate reaction.
Moving to Section 2, the fatal chuckle. So the merchant is listening to this entire ridiculous exchange between his farm animals, and he just loses it. He starts laughing out loud right in the middle of the moonlight.
Well, his wife hears him laughing out of nowhere, and she immediately gets defensive. She's like, "What are you laughing at? Are you making fun of me?" The merchant tries to brush it off, saying no, but she is not having it. She demands to know exactly what is so funny.
And this brilliantly illustrates his dilemma. He tells her the absolute truth. He says he cannot tell her. He explains that if he discloses the animal's secret conversation, it will result in his death. He says his reason for staying quiet is, quite literally, the fear of death.
Wait, what? She doesn't believe him at all? She tells him he's lying, making excuses, and swears she'll leave him if he doesn't explain the joke. He begs her, "If I tell you what the donkey said to the ox, I shall die." And her actual response is, "Yes, I insist, even if you have to die." She literally wants him to die over a joke?
Which brings us to Section 3, the absurd escalation. And this is where everything changes. Because instead of just putting his foot down and saying, "No, I'm not dying for your curiosity," the merchant actually agrees to do it. He just gives in.
He calls her daughters, her parents, the neighbors. He actually summons legal witnesses. He writes a will. He frees his slaves. Everyone is crying. The guy is fully preparing to execute himself over a donkey joke.
Section 4, the rooster's wild advice. The guy is literally about to die for absolutely nothing, but then, enter the rooster. The merchant wanders out, heavily grieving his own impending doom, and he overhears his rooster observing this massive, tragic scene. Now, the rooster has a very distinctly 9th century solution to this problem.
The rooster is strutting around, boasting to a dog. He says, "I manage 50 wives, and this merchant cannot manage one." He's basically calling the merchant a total fool for letting his wife bully him into the grave. The rooster suggests the merchant take some oak twigs, lock her in a room, and just beat her until she stops asking. Following the rooster's insane, patriarchal advice, the merchant actually does it. He beats her until she repents and says she won't ask anymore. The wife emerges penitent, the husband feels he's learned good management, and suddenly, I am not making this up, the text says everybody was happy and the morning turned into a celebration. Okay, that's definitely an artifact of its time, but it stops him from dying.
Section 5. Wait, what is the moral? Because we really have to ask, why are we looking at this today? Let's peel back the bizarre humor of talking farm animals and ancient marital advice and move into a deeper realization of why this story actually matters in the broader context of the Arabian Nights.
So the crucial point here is the context. This story wasn't just floating around in a vacuum. It was being told by a desperate vizier to his brilliant daughter, Sherazade, and he's telling her this to teach her about boundaries. You see, Sherazade is determined to marry the murderous King Shahryar, a king who marries a new woman every single day and kills her the next morning.
The vizier, her father, is using this extreme, ridiculous tale of the merchant to warn his daughter about self-preservation. He's saying, don't expose yourself to peril. Don't give in to unreasonable, fatal demands, or I will have to force you to stop, just like the merchant did to his wife. He is absolutely terrified for her life.
But here is the most amazing part. Scheherazade listens to this whole wild story, looks at her father, and says, "Such tales don't deter me. I must go to the king." She isn't deterred by the threat of violence or the threat of death. She insists on going anyway, showing incredible bravery to stop the king's reign of terror.
And that brings us to the so what. Beneath the wild thousand-year-old fairy tale logic, the story of the merchant is really about drawing a line when someone makes a demand that compromises your literal survival. The vizier uses it to say, protect yourself, but Scheherazade flips the script. She understands the boundary, but she consciously chooses to cross it for the greater good. She knows the stakes, and she goes anyway.
It really makes you think, how do modern relationships compare to these ancient parables? Obviously, we aren't dealing with talking donkeys or literal death threats over a joke, but how do we negotiate extreme demands today? Where do you draw the line when someone asks just way too much of you? It's fascinating how a story this old still sparks such relevant questions about human behavior.
Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Would you have told the secret? Subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next Amazing Explainer.